Welcome back to the Road to Great Health podcast, where we discuss natural solutions to today's worst health problems, and we got a good one for you today. I'm Dr. Kevin Lenderman from South Louisiana, Dr. Kevin's Wellness Clinic, and I'm joined by Dr. Rob DeMartino out of Las Vegas, Nevada. Doc, how's Vegas today?
Pretty good, man. Episode lucky number 13. Let's do this.
Let's do this, man. Lucky number 13. You know, last week we promised you guys that we would talk about stress today. And this is such an important issue. Dr. Rob and I talk to patients every single day that their stress is just through the roof. And I don't think people realize what a profound effect that has on their health and on their body. Doc, talk a little bit about that.
Oh, it's for me, it's one of the most important tipping points for somebody, you know, and I've said it before, probably even on the show, I would take somebody who has low stress, healthy relationships, likes their job, all those different types of things, over somebody who has an amazing diet, right? Yeah. Because those stress levels are just the ultimate killer. And look, if our government figures out that 80% of all health problems come from stress, and they're usually the last ones to figure anything out, right? So if we can figure out that it all comes from that, it is such a profound, and I'll tell you, for the people that you see, I'm sure it's the same in your clinic, when they have a lot of outside stress, they're significantly harder to get better because it's always working against the current.
Absolutely. Yes, it's so true. And, you know, times have really changed, even just over the last 50 or 60 years. You know, I have a 15-year-old son, and I like to expose him to some of the shows I watched when I was young. We were watching Andy Griffith's show the other day, and even back then, times were so much different. You know, they're sitting on the front porch whittling, they're picking the guitar and laughing and cutting up, and we just don't have that near enough in today's society. People are so stressed out over seems like everything, but the thing is, there's some very specific reasons this is happening that we're going to get into today.
Yeah, it's definitely the go, go, go. You know, it's the short attention spans. It's the... You know, if you got 2 seconds, you're on your phone looking. It's that constant, perpetual information cycles, and we're all guilty of it. I mean, I'm guilty of it too. But it's just the constancy of it now that's so different, and we're not designed for it.
It's true, and the other thing that people don't understand about stress is they think of stress as something emotional, like a job, the bills, traffic, the boss, something like that. But it's also possible for your body to go into stress mode, into fight or flight, from something in your body that doesn't belong there, like a bacteria or a virus, or even an outside source like electromagnetic fields or blue light, especially blue light and EMF. And also it's possible for you to have retired from a stressful job and your nervous system is still in that loop. So there's a lot of, you know, tentacles on this octopus here that we have to address today.
Yeah, and some of it can be old, you know, especially a lot of times childhood traumas and childhood upsets and stuff like that. You see that imprint on people over and over and over again, and you know, and it manifests as disease later on in life because it's the body is still reacting that way even if that stressor is gone.
Yeah, decades later.
The pattern still exists and imprints.
Yes, and so if you back us up to the hunter-gatherer days, stress was supposed to be a very short-term life-saving event, fight or flight. And everybody knows what fight or flight means, but it's sympathetic dominance is what we're really talking about. And so your nervous system has two halves. It has a calm, healing, digesting, replicating, you know, reproducing, libido, everything's happy, healthy side. That's called parasympathetic. And then you have I'm fighting off a predator and I'm in an emergency mode. That's called sympathetic. And the problem is the nervous system gets stuck in sympathetic dominance. And we talked a little bit about that in the podcast we did on POTS, because that's what POTS is it is a sympathetic dominant disorder, but it actually branches out so much because parasympathetic is where your digestion occurs and your hormones occur and so many other really good things that you want to have happen in your body.
And sleep. You know, I think sleep's another big one in parasympathetic too, where you have to sleep. And you have to think of your nervous system as it's the balance between the ability to speed up and slow down, right? So we always talk about fight or flight. It gets a bad rap, but it's an important thing, right? If I decide to go run, my heart's got to beat faster, right? My breathing has to increase. Now, I don't have to think about that. Like, nobody eats food and says, excuse me, I got to go focus on digesting, right? Like, I got to pay attention to this.
Yeah.
These things happen automatically for you. So it's important that things speed up, and it's important that they balance out and slow down. And I think one misconception about the nervous system is that we tend to think that the nervous system stays off and then it only turns on when it needs to. But it's not like that. Your nervous system is actually designed for fight or flight. It's designed to be in fight or flight all the time. And the strength of your parasympathetic nervous system, your brakes, stop you from doing that. So it's like a car. If you turn the car on and you put it in drive and you don't hit the gas but you also don't hit the brake, the car goes. Your nervous system always wants to go. We have to have the ability to shut it off. But if we're constantly stimulating it always to go and we're exhausting that calm system, eventually you're driving with no brakes. And you don't have to drive 100 miles an hour down the freeway to have no brakes be a problem. You got 5 miles an hour in the parking lot, you got yourself an issue. But it's real easy then all of a sudden to start picking up speed and things getting out of control.
Fascinating. Yeah, that's amazing. And this is something that, I mean, my gosh, if it's not 90% of the people have this to some degree or the other, I mean, it's got to be close to that. I mean, this happens. This is very common.
Oh yeah. I mean, if somebody's got a diagnosis of something wrong, like it's virtually guaranteed. Right. But even before they get a diagnosis, this is the thing that precedes them. These two systems are the kind of the tipping point that breaks where somebody says, I got sick and then I got better, versus I got sick or this event happened and my health went downhill. They're the tipping points. Right now, all of a sudden, they started to stay in sympathetic dominance because the body perceives crisis. And you can't be in crisis and healing at the same time. Right. So...
Yeah, I was doing a consultation with a lady today that she was in a bad marriage 25 years ago, a really bad marriage. And she's moved on. She got divorced. Her kids are grown. She has a new marriage. And her new marriage is great, married a great guy. And her nervous system, when we checked it, was off. When we did that heart rate variability, it was off the chart bad from 25 years ago being in a bad marriage, and her nervous system was still looping to the highest degree the test can measure it from 25 years ago. It's just phenomenal how the human body can do that.
Yeah, it's designed to. It seems like it's torturous, but it's actually designed to protect you. Again, we're designed for simpler times, and fight or flight is a life-saving phenomenon. But the interesting thing is when they found, and they did all the real research on the human stress response, which was in the 60s, what they found was the stress response happened no matter what the stressor was. Meaning, if someone was chasing me with an axe and about to kill me, versus I drank way too much coffee and I was around my router and I'm going to miss a work deadline, the stress response looks exactly the same on paper. Because we interpret any kind of stressor to our system as life or death. Even if it's, obviously, work deadlines are not life or death, but your nervous system interacts with it that way. And that's why you hear people say, I don't know why this one thing is bothering me so much. I've dealt with way worse things. Because the human stress response does not matter. You could show me two people who have stress on a piece of paper, and I could tell you a lot about it, but I can't tell you which one was in life-threatening danger and which one was in, some modern-day life stressor.
Yeah, the physiology is exactly the same. It's a switch. Yeah, absolutely. Now, when your body goes into fight or flight response, there are tons of different mechanisms your body goes through. There's like 50 different changes that take place, but I'm just going to tell you quickly the top 4. The first thing is my blood pressure goes up because I need to fight or run. The second thing is my body is going to divert the blood from my digestive system and my reproductive system, and it's going to move that in my arms and legs so I can fight or run faster. And then my sleep hormones are going to shut down. And then my cortisol and my blood sugar is going to spike because I need a lot of quick energy so I can fight or run. Now, I want you to think of the health problems I just talked about there. All of the cardiovascular and blood pressure problems, all the reproductive and hormonal problems, all of the digestive problems, all the sleep problems, all the blood sugar problems. This is like 70% of doctor's visits.
Mm-hmm. And that's why they say it's health, stress is such a pervading health problem across the board, and it plays a role in all these different types of issues because it's going to invoke all of these major systems. Again, your body feels that it is life or death, and it will react that way. And like I said before, now with blue lights and EMFs, which are triggering to those systems anyways, even without anything else happening. It's just this constant bombardment. And we've had this argument with neurology for years. People say, well, there's way more stress in the past. You were being chased by a large animal that was going to kill you and eat you. And that's true, but it's what we were designed for. We were designed for a high amount of stress, and then it stops. Either you get away from the animal or you don't. Either which way the stressor's over, right? You survived or you didn't. Either which way the stressor's over. But it's the constancy today. It's not designed for constant. You wake up under stress. You go to work under stress. You live under stress all day. You go to sleep under stress. That's what it's not designed for. High alert periods are fine, but the recovery not being there, it's like working out. If you just keep training, eventually you get hurt. You have to recover at some point.
Right. Right. Yeah. The analogy I like to use, I'm a big deer hunter, so I compare everything to the deer woods. But, if you take a deer and you just chase it nonstop all day, within a couple of days, it's going to be dead. You cannot survive in this constant state of fight or flight. And that's actually how wolves take out elk. They just chase them and chase them and chase them, and they can't stay in that state long enough, and they end up finally catching them, and the elk dies. But the thing that people need to understand about this is a reflex. It's as much of a reflex as I hit your knee with a reflex hammer and your leg kicks. That's going to happen whether you think about not doing it or not. There's no amount of psychology. There's no amount of meditation. There's no amount of talking about it. There's no amount of trying not to do it. If I hit your knee, your leg is going to kick no matter what you do. And that's the way this works in your body. This is a reflex. It is a physical reflex in your body that really needs to be worked on so we can shut down this response and stimulate that parasympathetic balance and bring all of that back. And that's a big part of what we do with the program that Dr. Rob's created, is try to get the body into that parasympathetic healing mode. And it's really one of the first parts of our program.
And I think it's a missing piece in so many things, because we'll talk about your chemistry's out of balance or your blood sugar's out of balance, but if you think of this as like your operating system, right? Your computer has a built-in operating system, and it's going to run that way no matter what you do with it, right? Everything you put through it is going to run through this operating system. Everything is going to run through with your autonomic nervous system, the branches that you're automatically not thinking about, it's controlling on its own. How that works, right? It depends how you heal. Can you heal? I mean, so many times where we run into autoimmune diseases, when we look at the pattern on this neurological test that we do, when we go to put them into healing zones and try to get their body to heal, they actually have a negative reaction to that. So until we can fix that, essentially the system that will fix them is the one that's broken. So no amount of supplements I give them or food diets I change with them or coaching that I could do with them is going to change until they can get themselves out of fight or flight. Because like we said before, you can't be in crisis and healing at the same time, right? You can't be having an eviction notice on your door now, but be saving money to retire in 50 years. No, you got to deal with the now, right? You have to deal with the problem that's kind of put right in your face. And so when the nervous system can get addressed along with all of these other things, now you can actually set a good foundation to where the body is capable of healing and healing quickly. Because if those systems are jumbled, and like you said, it is the core problem in POTS. Right, it is the core problem in POTS, is that system does not work. It's not fundamentally a heart problem. It is the neurological control of speeding up and slowing down the heart that they lose control over that. So if we don't have those systems working, and again, you're really right in pointing out the fact that this is an underlying operating system, right? It's not your fault. Your system is reacting that way because it's been the way it's been programmed to react. Now, the cool part is just like you can train muscle movements, like athletes train muscle movements, we can use things to retrain your nervous system so we can reset your operating system to a calm, balanced state. But that really has to be done. Otherwise, the amount of healing that you're going to get is going to be really limited, or you'll get stuck.
Yeah, it's true. Even this is my 29th year in practice, and even just it seems like the last 10 years, it just gets worse and worse. Everyone is just running at 100 miles an hour like never before. And it's really hard to quantify or really put a nail in why it feels different now. But it just feels different when you talk to people. Everyone is just sort of keyed up to the max. And, I think a big part of it is, like you teach us about the EMFs, opening the calcium channels and the blue light and all of those other things, because, work stress hasn't changed that much. What's changed the most is just all of the computers, the screens, the EMFs, the blue light. Those things seem to be multiplying at an exponential rate every year. Would you agree with that?
100%. I think there's probably some societal changes, right? I think social media, for some of its good points, is not the greatest thing in the world because it's designed to kind of ramp you up and keep everybody on edge. But at the same time, we're designed to basically be up and moving around in the sun, in the light, and then to come down when it's dark. And the reality of it is we are constantly bombarded by light. But that light is typically fake, right? So if you think about from like sunrise to sunset, there's that time frame, and then there's now the sun goes down, and now the body should start to come down. But we don't do that. We just go inside and we turn all the lights on. And all the lights that you see in the houses and things like that, they're all predominantly of the spectrum of color that's going to stimulate your nervous system. So now, as we should be coming down at the end of the day, we're not only stimulating our bodies with more light, we're stimulating it only with the type of light that makes us wake up. So blue light at night will have the same exact effect on somebody that drinking caffeine will have. Chemically, it's the exact same effect. Like, it will stimulate that exact same reaction inside their body. Now, you'll talk to people and say, like, oh, I won't drink coffee past 1 o'clock in the afternoon because if I do that, I'm up all night. But they don't relate to the fact that when they have their TVs on or their screens on or the overhead lights on them with those LED bulbs, they're getting that exact same chemical reaction just stimulated through light versus a drink or some sort of chemical that they're ingesting. And electromagnetic fields like Wi-Fi's and routers, and I cannot believe the amount of people I talk to who have all that stuff in their bedroom. Right? My Wi-Fi's in my computer's in my bedroom, or my home office in my bedroom, my Wi-Fi's in there, my router's in there. The way that stuff hurts us, the main way, is it puts our body into fight or flight for no other reason. So again, everything can be, perfect marriage, everything's hunky-dory now, and you put your cell phone to your head for a few-minute phone call, and your brain will start to act like it's in fight or flight for no other reason as that we've electromagnetically stimulated to think that should be the case. So now with this constant bombardment, you're not really going anywhere where there's not electromagnetic fields. We don't really think and know what's teaching about these concepts around light. And then what do we see? The first thing that typically happens when people get disease is they lose their sleep. We were talking about that last week, right? Their sleep goes haywire. Nobody comes in here with chronic disease and goes, no, I sleep great. That doesn't happen. They're always tired. They have poor sleep. It's broken sleep. They have a hard time sleeping. They wake tired, whatever that looks like. But that's because they're constantly stimulated. You have to have this balance between, hey, fight or flight when it's the right time, sped up, slow down when it's the right time. If we're constantly staying in this, then your body defaults and says, well, if we're always going to be in this, and it takes a lot of energy for us to get here, let's just stay here. Because remember, energy is the potential for change. So whenever we have to change something, it takes a lot of energy. And stress takes a lot of energy. Fight or flight takes a lot of energy in the system, right? Somebody scares you, and all of a sudden your heart's racing, you're completely freaked out. And when it's done, you're like, oh my God. Right? Oh, that took it out of me. Like, you have a 10-minute argument with somebody versus a 10-hour workday, you're way more tired after the 10-minute argument. The stress is significantly more taxing because it takes a lot of energy to change into that system. So if your body's constantly going from 0 to 60, it says, all right, let's just idle at 30. So we don't have to waste 60 units of energy, we just have to waste 30. And eventually we stay stuck in those zones, and by its nature, then the healing starts to become less and less and less.
Yeah, and so for our listeners out there, when Dr. Rob says something is chemically identical to coffee or some of the things, I want you guys to know that he's talking about real science, okay? Coffee blocks adenosine in our body, which makes us feel like we're awake. Blue light blocks adenosine in our body, which makes us feel like we are awake. Electromagnetic fields open our calcium channels, which fire one nerve to the next. That's the way your nervous system fires. Electromagnetic fields open our calcium channels, which fire one nerve to the next. So, sometimes we run by these things and say it's identical or it does this, just understand what we're talking about is hardcore science. This is not something we're just sort of making up as we go. When we say things like this, it's actually the physiology of what these things do inside your cellular structures. We're talking about physiology. Mm-hmm. And so I just kind of wanted to let you guys know, this is science-based data that we're talking about here.
Yeah, it almost sounds like woo. And
yeah, it does. It sounds like woo-woo, right?
Yeah, like lights? Like, what would that be? But at the same time, when you Google all of this, which I highly encourage everyone to do, I know we're of the doctor type that's like, yeah, no, you have to be proactive for your own health. Google, find stuff, man. It's important. You will find a tremendous amount of research on this. And now it doesn't come out because it's not, unless you ask a specific question about it, it's not something that Google or whatever search engine is going to offer to you. Because it's just not the purpose of how they're going to try. They're going to try to affect it through chemicals, right? We're going to give you this chemical to make this effect. But they're not going to tell you, hey, you're having this effect because of all of this light you're exposed to. And light at the wrong time, right? So if this light stimulates you, it's not a bad thing if it happens during the day, right? If that light occurs at sunrise, what's a great thing? It'll wake you up. That's when you want it. But if that same type of light happens at night, that's not when you want it, right? So a good thing at the wrong time is a problem, because now all of a sudden it's going to wake you up. It's going to break these patterns, and like you said, your digestion is going to go to a halt. Your heart starts to have to work harder. Your body's meant for everyone sleeps, right? I remember it was years ago. There was that Netflix movie where the whole world lost the ability to sleep, and like after a couple of days they died. And you texted me like, hey, you got to watch this movie, and I was like, I saw it. It was crazy, right? Because everyone has to sleep. You have to be able to shut your body down to recover. And what we're seeing right now in a huge pandemic of all these problems is they're not able to do that because they're constantly stimulated. And again, what does that look like? And then you got the double whammy of you're doom scrolling, as my kids call it, like you're doom scrolling on Facebook or whatever social media, looking at all these things that stir you up with the same type of light and electromagnetics that are going to stir you up. And then you put it down, you lay down on the bed, you're going to try to go to sleep. These things don't compute, right? Your operating system is now completely haywire, and even if you do get to sleep, you're not going to get into those deep restful zones, which is really where you heal.
Yeah, and then the patients, one of the questions I ask patients all the time is, so when you wake up, is your energy good and it drops off too quickly, or do you wake up and you're already exhausted? And so many of them say, I wake up already exhausted, which means you're not recuperating. And so your iPhone puts out the same amount of light to your brain as the noonday sun. So if it's 9 o'clock at night and you're doom scrolling on Facebook, your brain is going, it's noon. And that stimulates your sympathetic fight or flight side, not your parasympathetic, calm, relaxed, digest, and sleep side. And so you add that with the Wi-Fi routers and the EMF firing off those channels, and then you got the boss that you argued with, you're still thinking about, and the kids are arguing in the other room. I mean, no wonder people's nervous system is just so keyed up to where it's just about to blow so often.
Yeah, we're living in the state where we're just kind of frying ourselves, right? And you're looking at these phones and then the light that they, and then of course, we talked about it one other time too. We talked about thyroid. You got the phone up and you've got all this light, blue light hitting your thyroid, which is typically uncovered, right? Because it's going to be right by your neck. Right. And then it roasts your thyroid function as well too. So then we have this whole, before in the 70s, thyroid was an unusual diagnosis. Now it's the most common diagnosis that people will get. But we just can't be keyed up this much all the time. I mean, you think about blood pressure, right? Heartbeats, your heart's a muscle. You only have so many amount of these heartbeats. It can't stay at that rate really high all the time. Otherwise, you're going to run through it before you want to, right? You're going to run out of beats essentially in the course of this lifetime. Your heart's not infinite. It's only got a certain amount of cycles inside of it. And that's where, the ability to disconnect, right? The ability to go into those zones where you can kind of shut that down and find that balance between movement and quiet, right? And a lot of the times quiet looks like lazy, and it's not, right? There is that time, but you need it to sleep. Actually, one of the greatest determinants for somebody's health is when they come out of sleep, or even better yet, when they come out of like an anesthesia, like say they have a surgical or something. How do they come out of it? you get those people who come out and they're like wide awake and they just start talking to you like normal. Or you wake up in the morning and like you're one of those annoying people who like is just up and you're awake and you're happy it's morning and you're like talking and everyone else is like. If you come out and you're awake like that, it's a great indicator for health. And if you come out and you're like, man, it takes me an hour to get going, that's a bad sign because again, we're losing this delineation between I'm up and ready to go and I'm calmed down and I'm ready to go to sleep. You know, like I always joke that my wife's superpower is sleeping. I was like, that woman lays down, she could sleep. Like I can tell her right now, like, hey, lay on this table and fall asleep. She could crawl up there, woman could go to sleep. It's a beautiful thing, right? But she's very much careful about how she delineates all of these things so that way she can get down to sleep. So the speed of which you can fall asleep is very determined of how your body can slow down. The efficiency of how you wake up is very indicative of how your body wakes up. These are really telling things. And if they're not happening well, I encourage you to deal with them now before you end up in one of our offices because you're going to end up having one of the problems of the type of things that we see. But it's also... but if you already have one of those problems... You have to solve that issue. Otherwise, fundamentally, you're very much working against the current. If the nervous system isn't working the way it's supposed to, everything you throw at it is working against the grain. And we want to try to get everything moving together. And it's amazing how much better people get. Once you see, and you see it on the testing that we do, once the nervous system breaks and goes in the direction that you want it to go, and you now have this pattern that's correct, then their healing takes off. Then they start
it's so true. I mean, it's crazy how quickly once you get someone into parasympathetic, they just start moving through the program. And so, Doc, let's talk about that test just a little bit. So the very best test that we can do to determine the balance between your fight or flight and the calm side of your nervous system is called heart rate variability. And it's not a heart test, it's a nerve test. It's testing your autonomic balance. We do it for all of our POTS cases. Well, we do it for all of our cases that come in just to see where their balance is. So, Doc, tell us a little bit about how the heart rate variability works and why it's so critical in looking at the balance of this part of the nervous system.
So a lot of people are more familiar with it now, right? Because if you have the watches, and we don't like the wearable tech, obviously, but it'll measure your heart rate variability and things like that. But it is the diagnostic test for POTS, right? That is the test that you do to diagnose POTS. But we do it on every single person who walks in because, and our test is a little bit unique in the sense of like, you know, when you're doing some of the ones at home, they'll give you a starting number. Hey, where are you at rest or where are you at when you're sleeping? But we want to know three very different pieces of data. What does your nervous system look like when you're resting? What does your nervous system look like when we stress it a little bit? And then how does your nervous system recover from that stress? Because I want the 3 points of data because I want to see, hey, where do you start? Some people start off fine, right? And they'll say, it's weird, Doc, my heart rate variability looks good on my watch. And then when we do it, but when we stress them, and the stress is not a lot of stress. We're not like chasing them here, right? Like their stress goes all the way off the charts. And I'm like, yeah, you start fine. But your body, like you're driving without brakes. Once you start going, you can't stop. And then that's the reaction that's going to hurt you. And then we need to see, can you recover? Physically, can you heal? There's a pattern that we talk about on heart rate variability called resistance to healing. And it's all of those people who fill we see it all the time. It's all the people who fill our offices because they'll come in and they're like, Doc, I'm the anomaly. I'm the weird case. Like if I confuse all the doctors. If something's going to go wrong, it's going to go wrong to me. They perceive that as them, but it's not. It's just that their nervous systems are jumbled. So meaning, when we go to put them in that parasympathetic zone where they'll heal, their parasympathetic has a negative response. So they almost show like they're in stress when they try to heal. It's just because their operating system gets miswired. So how fundamental is that? If they are resistant to healing, the right things that they do and all the effort that they put out there doesn't get them the results that they want. So you have a step for one with those people. Before you can start getting into the interesting stuff of their specific condition, you have to set their baselines. You have to reset their operating system so they can heal. So many people, I'm sure you see it too, they have that pattern. And if you don't do that first, or in conjunction with everything else you're doing, again, you're going to be very limited on how far you can get. But this is a fundamental test. Now, the cool part about it is, if you're healthy, that test usually looks pretty good, and it'll show up really early if there's starting to be some dysfunctions with it. You know, there's a lot of different layers of what this looks like. The test was originally designed 50 some odd years ago, and medically they only really ever use it to say, well, is this person in heart failure? And yeah, but like if you're in heart failure, you just go to the emergency room and they do life-saving stuff to save you, which they do. But we want to look at it from a factor of like, here's heart failure and here's not. Where are we? Right? Because nobody's here and then here immediately, right? There's always this continuum of where they go. If we're here, we don't want you to end up in heart failure. What do we do to change that pattern to make it go back this way? So now being able to get the data of what their nervous system is doing and then applying frequencies to stimulate or calm their nervous system in whatever specific pattern that they have can actually retrain their nervous system the same you would retrain a muscle to fire the way that we want it to, basically with no effort. Right? The frequencies create the change because it would be like going in and coding and putting the zeros and the ones and coding in different places. You're just reteaching their nervous system how to fire correctly. Now that takes some reps and some time, but if you can do that, now you set the foundation for them to be able to build off of now getting better and then forever.
Yeah. And it's really cool because our patients feel this happening. I have all the time patient pulls me, Doc, I need to talk to you. I pull them into the room and they go, I'm going into parasympathetic. I can feel it. Like I can feel myself not being in fight or flight anymore. I feel so much better and I'm sleeping so much better. And sometimes it happens just like that. And so like 1 week they're still going into sympathetic and then all of a sudden their nervous system figures it out and they start going into that parasympathetic side and the patients feel a dramatic difference with this right away.
Yeah, it's very tangible, right? And one of my favorite things about the test is when I go over it with everybody, the most common comment that I will get is, so I'm not crazy. Because the graph represents exactly how they feel. And they'll typically look at the spouses with them and be like, see? And I'm like, yeah, this is why you experience this or you would experience that. They kind of laugh and or, whatever that looks like from their nervous chuckles. I said, but that's the most common thing that we tell. So I'm not crazy. It's a visual representation of how they feel on the inside, and they can't put their finger on it because it's not something they're doing. It's just how their body reacts. But then when that shifts, it's real obvious. Like, and it's this really profound thing, and it's foundational to healing.
Yeah. And the cool thing about the heart rate variability is it's a graph, and you can see it, and then we can redo it later, and you can actually see it changing. And we check it in calm, stressed, and in recovery. And once your nervous system starts to recover, that means that your health is going to start to recover. Well, guys, thanks a lot, man. I really appreciate you joining us today. If you're struggling with these type of problems and you feel like you've been stuck, meaning you've been to places, nothing's working for you, it could be that your nervous system is just stuck in the wrong mode. Your wiring is just miswired, and you need to get it over into that healing mode so that the other things you do after that will work. Because being in sympathetic dominance is like quicksand. You're not moving forward until that part gets fixed. And that's why with Dr. Rob's program, we make that step number one is fix the nervous system, get that in balance, and then we can fix everything else. Does that sound right, Doc?
100%. And the more you struggle in that quicksand, the faster you go down until everything goes.
Yeah, the faster you go. Absolutely. Well, we appreciate you joining us for today's podcast. Don't forget to tune in next week. And if you guys want to contact one of our offices, our email addresses are right here above, or our websites are right here above. So don't hesitate to visit our website. We both have tons of great information on our website. So check us out. Doc, I'll see you next week, man. Thanks a lot.
Have a great one.
All right. Thanks, guys.